Is America doomed to collapse like ancient Rome? Theo Von and Roman Empire expert Mike Duncan exposed chilling parallels in this past weekend's episode 589. Discover 10 takeaways, one so shocking it could change how you see our future forever. Takeaway 1. Is America facing Rome's fate? Mike Duncan compares the decline of Rome's republic to modern America, warning that similar problems could spell trouble. He explains that Rome fell apart because of huge wealth gaps, where rich elites took land from small farmers, leaving them poor and angry. Today, Duncan says, America has similar inequality, with a few holding most of the wealth. In Rome, political fights grew nasty after they beat their rival Carthage, as elites stopped working together, leading to civil wars. Duncan sees this in America's bitter politics since the Cold War ended. He notes that Rome's leaders ignored the poor, sparking revolts, and wonders if America's leaders are doing the same. Duncan dismisses ideas that immigration caused Rome's fall, saying it does not match America's issues. He points out that Rome's armies became loyal to generals like Caesar, not the state, but America's centralized military pay keeps soldiers loyal to the government. Still, Duncan warns that internal divisions could weaken America, though its strong military buys time. For example, Duncan mentions Rome's Gracchi brothers, who tried to fix inequality but were killed by elites, a warning for today's leaders ignoring the struggling masses. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 2. Avoiding America's Civil War. Mike Duncan warns that civil wars, like those that tore Rome apart, destroy a country from within. He and Theo Von talk about how America could split, maybe between rural and city folks, if tensions get worse. Duncan says Rome's civil wars started when ambitious leaders chased power and forgot shared goals. He sees this in America's toxic political fights, where leaders seem to care more about winning than uniting people. Duncan calls civil war the worst thing and urges finding common purpose to avoid it. He notes that Rome's elites ignored the consequences of their greed, sparking chaos, much like today's divided leaders. Duncan stresses that romanticizing conflict is dangerous, as it ruins homes and lives. For example, Duncan brings up the English Civil Wars, known as a war without an enemy, showing how even small divides can lead to pointless destruction, a lesson for America today. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 3. Why Rome collapsed. Mike Duncan says Rome did not just fall, but changed, with the Western Empire fading, while the Eastern Byzantine Empire lasted longer. He blames civil wars, bad economy, and outsider pressures for the West's decline. Duncan explains that Rome stopped winning wars abroad, so it lost money and wrecked its own lands in fights. Germanic tribes, once weak, got stronger and beat Roman legions. A leader named Alaric the Goth sacked Rome in 410 AD, not out of hate, but because Rome refused to accept his people. Duncan calls this a calculated betrayal, not random violence. He adds that weak leaders, like young emperors in Ravenna, made things worse. Duncan ties this to America, noting that poor leadership and internal fights could harm any nation. For example, Alaric served Rome's army for 20 years, but turned against it when promises were broken, showing how disloyalty can destroy empires. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 4. Rome's wolf-raised founders. Mike Duncan shares the myth of Romulus and Remus, twin brothers raised by a wolf after being left in a river. This story, though likely untrue, defined Rome's identity. Duncan says early societies used myths to teach values like strength and loyalty. The tale shows Rome's love for war, as Romulus killed Remus to found the city. Duncan notes that even ancient historian Livy, writing centuries later, doubted the wolf part, suggesting it meant a local woman. These myths helped Romans justify their tough society. Duncan compares this to modern myths that shape nations. For example, the United States has stories like George Washington never lying, created to build pride and unity, just like Rome's tale. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 5. Rome's mighty legions. Mike Duncan explains that Rome's power came from its legions, led by consuls who fought alongside soldiers. These leaders proved their loyalty on the battlefield. Duncan says only men with property could join the legions, linking military duty to social status. This kept the army tied to Rome's success. The legions conquered huge lands, uniting the Mediterranean. Duncan notes that Rome adopted the weapons and ideas of defeated enemies, making it stronger. Later, though, soldiers followed generals like Caesar, not Rome, causing trouble. Duncan hints that America's unified military avoids this risk. For example, Roman coins had slogans like, "I love the army," used to keep soldiers proud and loyal, a trick to boost morale. We're halfway through the video. Thanks for sticking with us. If you're enjoying it, hit the thumbs up and share it in your WhatsApp groups. If you'd like to support us, please tap the thanks button below. It helps us keep making great content. Drop a comment and don't forget to hit subscribe for more. Now let's continue with the video. Takeaway 6, Rome's strict society. Mike Duncan describes Rome as a harsh, male-dominated society with a rigid class system. Men ruled, and women were mostly valued for raising future soldiers. Duncan says slaves and women were told to stay in their place, with little chance to rise. Yet some rich widows owned land and supported groups like early Christians. Duncan explains that the army gave outsiders a shot at citizenship after 20 years, a rare way to climb up. Even emperors sometimes came from low roots through military skill. Duncan notes that Rome's strict order kept it stable but limited many lives, a contrast to America's freer society. For example, Roman tablets show soldiers carried citizenship papers after service, proof of their hard-earned status. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 7, Life in Ancient Rome. Mike Duncan paints a picture of daily life in Rome, different for each class and time. Most Romans were farmers, growing barley or millet, rarely leaving their villages. In big cities like Rome, with over 1 million people, life buzzed with workers, artisans, and elites. Duncan says regular folks worked hard, often begging rich patrons for money. Most wore simple tunics and sandals, while togas were for fancy occasions, like suits today. Food was basic, like grains or fish, but sometimes included odd dishes like dormice. Duncan notes wine was thick and mixed with water, and drinking it pure was a bad sign. For example, digs in Pompeii found garum, a fish sauce Romans loved, showing their unique tastes. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 8, Rome's gods and sacrifices. Mike Duncan says religion was huge in Rome, with consuls leading rituals to please gods like Jupiter or Minerva. Romans worshipped many gods, often taken from Greek culture. Duncan explains that they accepted the gods of conquered lands, seeing them as versions of their own. Sacrifices were serious, tied to winning wars. Gladiatorial fights and chariot races, held in places like the Colosseum, began as religious events but turned into fun. Duncan notes that religious rules varied by city, showing Rome's flexibility. For example, chariot races in the Byzantine Empire caused riots, proving how religion and politics mixed to shape life. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 9, How History Gets Twisted. Mike Duncan says historians like him try to use original sources, like Roman writings by Livy or Polybius, but biases sneak in. He admits Roman historians often wrote moral stories, not just facts. For example, Livy's tale of the Battle of Cannae might favor his family. Duncan stresses that honest historians aim for truth but cannot avoid their own views. He notes missing records like a lost Roman battle bragged about by Persian kings create gaps. Duncan says this matters for understanding Rome's story and even America's history. For example, Emperor Claudius wrote a truthful history, but it was destroyed by those in power, showing how truth gets buried. Now let's move to the last takeaway. Takeaway 10, Duncan's history lessons. Mike Duncan talks about his projects, like his History of Rome podcast, which tells Rome's story in 189 episodes over 5 years. He wrote a book, The Storm Before the Storm, about Rome's republic falling, and another on the Marquis de Lafayette, a revolutionary hero. Duncan also started a sci-fi podcast about a Martian revolution in 2247, using history to comment on today. He says these projects show how past patterns repeat. For example, Duncan's Martian story uses the French and Russian revolutions to predict how future societies might fight, linking Rome's lessons to tomorrow. Here is a brief introduction about Mike Duncan. Mike Duncan is a historian and podcaster best known for his History of Rome podcast, which covers the Roman Empire's rise and fall in 189 episodes. He also wrote The Storm Before the Storm, a book about the Roman Republic's decline, and hosts a sci-fi podcast on a future Martian revolution. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support this channel, hit the thanks button below. It really helps us keep going. If you enjoyed this summary, please leave a like and share it in your WhatsApp groups. To join discussion about this video, drop a comment below. And for more videos like this, hit the subscribe button below.